ready? You got me running, you got me running, got me running. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby.
I am Meredith Hirsh, and this is Working Healthcare. Today marks an exciting moment I've long anticipated, the chance to interview Chuck Melendi, not only a fellow Florida Gator, but a seasoned leader in the healthcare industry. With 35 years of experience, Chuck has navigated the intricate worlds of medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and biotechnology. During his impressive 25 years at Johnson & Johnson, Chuck shaped key sales and marketing strategies and even spent 2 transformative years in Europe, gaining valuable insights into international healthcare markets. His expertise in account management allowed him to build strong relationships with payers and specialty pharmacies, positioning him as a significant influence in the healthcare landscape. Now that Chuck has retired from J&J, we seize the rare opportunity to candidly explore the complexities of Big Pharma with a true insider. Did you know that the pharmaceutical industry invests a staggering $83 billion on research and development each year? Or that approximately 75% of pharmaceuticals are developed right here in America? Despite these contributions, Big Pharma often faces criticism and skepticism regarding drug pricing and access. Many people perceive Big Pharma as the primary source of high drug costs, yet a closer look reveals that pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, play a significant role in this equation. These entities negotiate drug prices and determine which medications reach consumers, often overshadowing the role of pharmaceutical companies themselves. As we dive into today's conversation, we'll unpack why Big Pharma receives criticism and examine the multifaceted dynamics at play in the pharmaceutical industry. So if you're ready to gain insights into the realities of the pharmaceutical world and hear from one of its most experienced leaders, stay tuned for my conversation with Chuck Melendi. Chuck, welcome to Working Healthcare.
Thanks, Meredith. Super excited to hop on here. As you know, I've waited about 8 months since we last spoke last summer at a meeting. And I told you, if you want me to get on your show and be able to tell you a lot more, wait till I retire. And I don't represent my company. So I'm here as a private citizen and really looking forward to it.
I am so excited. So to just break it down in easy terms, what qualifies as Big Pharma, and how do these companies differ from smaller biotech firms? Since today we're really going to talk about Big Pharma.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I actually wrote that down. Drug manufacturers, somehow we got the moniker of being Big Pharma, and I laugh because we're not the big players, or at least not anymore. I mean, if you think about it, Johnson & Johnson is the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, and we had revenues in 2023 of about $85 billion. United Healthcare had revenues that same year of $371 billion. And when I ask people that's how I start all my talks, people can't believe it. What's funny is if you took the total revenue of the 5 largest drug manufacturers in the world, and these are names that we all know. You're talking Pfizer, Merck, BMS, J&J, AbbVie. If you added them all together, their total revenue in 2023 was $311 billion. Aetna and United had bigger revenues that year than those 5 combined largest manufacturers. So how we've been termed Big Pharma, it's stuck. I call it the easy button of healthcare because everybody knows drugs. And so we take the hit, but we're not the big boys anymore.
Not necessarily the big boys, but still big boys or girls,
yes,
right?
We are.
So Big Pharma, we call those the big 3. They're certainly the big 3 when we talk about insurance. But as of recent data, there are about 15 Big Pharma companies that are listed in the Fortune 500. Companies, as you said, like J&J, Pfizer, Merck, AbbVie, they consistently rank in the top. And they're reflected in substantial revenue and they influence the healthcare sector for sure. So How do you think the financial power of these companies affects their responsibility to public health and public access?
I mean, we have a huge responsibility. There's no doubt about it. I will tell you, I'm proud of the work that I did at Johnson and Johnson and the industry. And like in the industry, you have your good players and your bad players. I mean, unfortunately, like we had Pharma Bro, which was Martin Shkreli, who took a life-changing drug for AIDS patients that cost like $13.50 and increased the price by 750%.
Mm-hmm.
He went to jail for 7 years and just finished that sentence. You have the Sackler family at Purdue with the opioid crisis. I mean, they give our industry a black eye. But, if you look at the transformative changes that we have made from turning diseases that used to be a death sentence, whether it's AIDS, cancer, the list goes on. I mean, our industry has turned those into chronic diseases. And I know that your practice handles some of those diseases. So, there's no doubt that we can be better at what we do. There are things that our industry does that I disagree with, that I have issues with.
So what are those? Let me ask you, what are those? Because yes, they are spending all of this money in research and development. They are responsible. 75% of drugs are created in the US. And so we are responsible for creating change. Big Pharma is responsible. What are they doing wrong? What do you not agree with?
Okay, so I won't say that they're doing this wrong, and this is what I disagree with. I don't like direct-to-consumer advertising. I mean, at the end of the day, basically it changed in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to that, and I used to sell pharmaceutical drugs prior to 97, we used to have commercials, but they were unbranded. So they would get on there and they would talk about, if you have this type of disease state, you could have this issue. Go see your physician. Let him tell you what to do, or her. In 97, the FDA changed the rules and they were able to start to do branded drugs. And I can tell you, J&J at the time, we did not embrace that, but it works. And
It
so
does.
at the end of the day, when our competitors started to do it, and some of them were outspending us 50 or 100 to 1, we were getting our butts kicked. So we had to start to do DTC. I wish they would take that away and really and truly let the physician and the patient make the decision, and not a patient coming in going, I heard about this drug on TV and you should prescribe it for me. So
well, let me ask you that. In 2023, Big Pharma actually allocated about $6.5 billion in consumer advertising. So how do you perceive the effectiveness of this spending in reaching and educating patients? Is there any good out of this, or do you see this all as a negative?
No, I think there is some good. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that do not go on the internet and get information that way. They don't read, so they're going to hear it on TV, and they may hear something that might help them, and then that gets them to go to the physician's office. I'm sure there is some good that comes out of it. I can tell you, it definitely is effective. It definitely drives sales, or you would not see over $6 billion a year being spent in that. There's too many smart people making those decisions. But at the end of the day, I'd rather that money go into R&D. I'd rather go back to unbranded. We'll see if the genie can be put back in the bottle.
So how does their advertising affect the public view on the medication? I would love to hear your perspective as an insider.
I've not really looked at surveys. I don't know how the public views it. I know as a private citizen, I get tired of seeing different, products pop up on the TV all the time.
What
Same
about
with
drug
attorneys
pricing?
and everything else.
Does all of the money spent on the advertising impact drug pricing?
I don't think it does. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you go to transparency reports, which I think pharma has taken the lead in the industry, and transparency is needed, we spend 10 times on research and development what we spend on sales and marketing, at least at J&J. And I think that's pretty standard across the industry. So while we do spend a decent amount in advertising, I mean, we are in business to sell products, it is dwarfed by what we put into research and development to bring new life-changing medicines to market.
So I also did a little bit of research and found that Big Pharma spends about half, so $3 billion annually, just targeting physicians. And I know that they're always coming into our office and wanting to take us out to dinner, although the sunshine laws change that a little bit. Bring us lunch. No more pens do we get. We don't get pens. Apparently, that was really influential. But how do you think this impacts prescribing practices and patient outcomes? Do you believe that the level of investment influences doctors' decisions?
Once again, I was in marketing years ago. I will tell you, the market research does show. Look, it's like anything. You try to find out who the best targets are, where you will get your best return on investment, be your most effective. So, I mean, it allows you to find out who prescribes more of a certain specialty, who's more conservative, who's more aggressive, where would you want to spend your time? I mean, every industry does this, and I don't think pharma's any different.
Do you think there or actually are there tracking models that say, okay, this pharmaceutical rep went to this practice 10 times this year, and this was the amount of drug spend. Next year, let's play around with it and go 20 times to that practice and see if that drug spend increases? Are there models like that that the pharmaceutical companies
I've
use?
not seen them, but I wouldn't doubt that there's market research that would help with that. I can tell you that over 35 years, I have seen Salesforce strategies change. So I think it's a moving target. Physicians come and go. They get older, they get more conservative, they get less conservative. I think at the end of the day, I mean, like at the end of the day, you're trying to educate so they can make a good decision because physicians are smart. They know what they're doing. So you provide them with information and you don't want to waste your time. So if you can be effective, that's what you're going to do. And you're going to use all the tools you can to do that.
So, what is the ultimate goal of a pharmaceutical company?
Well, we live in America. So, I think number one, I mean, we're in business. So you better make some money if you want to stay in
Thank
business. But I
you.
would say the
You
ultimate goal,
passed my test, because that
yeah,
is, I say, even if you're the American Cancer Society, your number one goal is to make money, because without making money, you are not going to achieve your mission statement.
correct.
So what's the mission statement of a pharmaceutical company?
I think like they're all going to vary to some degree. J&J goes by a credo, which I think is pretty amazing. But I think every pharmaceutical company, especially those that have been around a long time and have sustaining power, they've brought products to market that have changed patients' lives. I mean, there is no doubt that the drug industry, and look, we have our issues like everybody else, but there is no doubt that the majority of people want to have an impact on patients' lives. And that is driven down at every meeting that we go to. I just retired. People talk about stories. I mean, I used to walk into physicians' offices and literally the nurse would pull me aside. Sometimes it'd take me to a patient. And the patient would say, "Your company makes this drug. Thank you so much. It changed my life." That's pretty cool.
So how does J&J or how do other pharmaceutical companies decide how they're spending their R&D money?
Well, it's interesting. When I worked in Europe, usually in the past they would silo marketing sales from research and development. But in Europe, and this talk in '06 to '08, we actually marketing and our research and development will work together, which I thought was phenomenal. But they do a bunch of market research. They look at what's out there. You can go to clinicaltrials.gov and you can find out what drugs are in the pipeline, what drugs are in clinical trials, where is there a need. Sometimes you're doing it for, to where is there a population that's underserved. I mean, congestive heart failure was a huge thing. Gastro diseases were huge, rheumatoid arthritis, you name it. But there's also going back to the missions. J&J, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, we came out with a new drug for tuberculosis that really and truly was being used in developing countries because there weren't any effective medications out there. And we are losing money on that drug, but it is the right thing to do. So there is always a balance. But yes, I'll give you a really good example. And sorry, I'm keep going back to Johnson & Johnson, but that's where I know the most. Is probably 10 years ago, we made a concerted effort that we wanted to be the number one oncology company in the world. And we at the time were like number 9 or 10. I think we're up to number two. So, you decide where, you skate to where the puck's going to be, not to where it's at if you want to be successful.
But does
And
that also include acquisition? So not just R&D, but the big pharma companies acquiring smaller companies in order to get that increased market share?
Absolutely. I mean, you see it. I think there's a trend. You obviously will have your in-house R&D folks that are always working on projects, but we have teams, every company does, I'm sure, has teams that is scouring the internet, clinicaltrial.gov, looking at companies that maybe have a drug that's in the pipeline, phase 1, 2, or 3, that looks promising, that is going to be in a space that there is a need or that fits with your portfolio. And you target that company and you go and you talk to them. And if you talk to like US Bio, a lot of small companies are there working with them, startups trying to find new molecules, hoping to get bought up by big pharma. And that is somewhat of an accelerator, and I think has helped with the acceleration of new drugs that are transformative coming to market faster.
So the acquisition of these big pharma companies purchasing these smaller entities, you believe actually helps patients down the road as opposed to hinders them? If everybody's working toward one mission, my thought process actually goes straight into the healthcare world when it comes to physician practices, or when it comes to the big three and the insurance companies and the PBMs. When everything is so integrated, it can actually hinder patient care. So in big pharma, do you believe it helps hurt or hinder, benefit or hinder patient care?
And I see where you're coming from. In this situation, I think it helps because let me give you an easy example. Someone like myself who retires, I used to call on the payers for 10 years. I still have relationships there. If I'm a brand new company and I'm small and I have a drug, the chance that I can get into the door of a payer or get on their contract or on their formulary is small. But if I am part of a large company, the chances of that drug getting on that formulary is escalated tremendously. So you're either going to get through there from the size of your company or through contacts. Unfortunately, in our industry, small company, very little chance to get in the door of a payer to get their drug available to patients and physicians.
So let's talk.
Big Pharma helps.
So let's talk about that in the formulary. What role do pharmacy benefit managers play in the pricing structure and the medications that actually get onto the insurance contracts for patients? And this is when you chuckle because you're like, oh, let's talk about PBMs.
Straight to the heart. It's really interesting. The marketplace has evolved quite a bit. When I first started negotiating with health plans back in like 2009, this is going to make you laugh. Maddie Feldman, who's been a guest on your show, I walked her through this one day when we were at dinner. She knew a lot of it, but I gave her some more insights. But basically, we would walk in there, and when I started with our account management team, our strategy was we'd walk into an insurance company or PBM, and we would say, we will give you 1 to 3% for administrative fees, as long as there was equal access across the board for all products in that category. We never went for preferred status. We never tried to exclude. And the insurance companies and some of my buddies who I would negotiate with would always push me. If you pay me more, I'll prefer you over your competitors. I'm like, no, that should be between the physicians and the patients. Well, in about 2010, one company did break the wall, paid extra. I got a phone call from my main account and he said, you're going to pay me more money. I'm like, no, you know where I stand. He goes, well, then you'll be behind your competitor because they're paying me more. And
do you want to share who started this game in 2010?
I will not share that. Even though I'm retired, I won't.
Now we'll have to Google it.
Go look and see what the biggest products in the world ever in the pharmaceutical industry, and it'll give you a good hint. But I will tell you that the role they play now is the tail wags the dog. So we used to go in there, and as well did our competitors, and we would talk about the safety and the efficacy of our drugs and the patient services that we would wrap around our drugs for physicians and patients. But once it started to go down the rabbit hole of rebates and paying for preference and paying to be on a formulary, then it started to really become about money. And it started to spiral because if you think about it, if I have a drug and I only raise the price on that drug 10%, I can give you probably a 7 or 8% rebate and still make 2 to 3% profit, of the drug price increase versus the rebate. But if I raise my price 20%, I can give you a 15% rebate and still make 5% on that drug. So not only do you get almost double the rebate as the other guy who doesn't raise his price as much, you're making a bigger profit. And that's why you saw between 2010 and 2014, drug prices went through the roof, because that was the game. Raise your price quick because I can give a bigger rebate. And that is a big secret that a lot of people don't know about happened. There is all kinds of stuff. We would need hours to talk about it. But bottom line is, if we want to be on a formulary, if we don't want to be disadvantaged, it's even to the point now, Meredith, where it used to be, okay, I have a drug for inflammatory disorders and I paid to be preferred. And then it got to the point, well, your drug in inflammatory disorders, you have an indication in rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis, in ulcerative colitis. Now you need to negotiate to be preferred in each one of those indications. So it has really gotten to, the negotiations are fairly brutal. I would say that on average, you're seeing 40 to 60% off of drugs as far as the net cost to payers from all these rebates. The big question is, where's all that money going? Because if you go to drug channels, I know you know of Adam Fine with drug channels, he's phenomenal. He even said for the 7th straight year in a row, the net cost of drugs dropped. So the net cost, or the net price, which is the cost to the payers, has gone down from pharma for 7 straight years, yet the cost of drugs to patients has gone up.
And who gets the money?
Well, I'll tell you, we're not getting it. I mean, right now, if you do the math, the manufacturers who do R&D, do everything to bring a product to market, get less than 50 cents spent on every US dollar on drugs. The majority, greater than 50%, goes to the middlemen in our country, whether it's a hospital, PBM, insurer, providers, you name it, or the government.
And I would say the PBMs, $850 billion last year went to PBMs. So prior to PBMs being in the game, there was an additional $850 billion that could be saved. That's how I see it.
It's crazy. If you add the 5, and the insurers and PBMs have gotten in bed together with each other.
Well, they own each other.
They own each other. And so if you take the 5 largest PBM/insurers in the country, their annual revenue is over $1.2 trillion, which is insane. Yeah. And what's funny is Europe seems to work pretty well, and there are no insurers or PBMs over there. Just saying. Yes.
Oh, please, we can go to town on the PBMs. So let's do that a little bit more. What do we do about biosimilars or generic drugs? How has that played a part in the role for Big Pharma, and also a role with PBMs and the cost of medication for patients?
Yeah, it's all complicated. There's never a simple answer. So the generics and biosimilars are fantastic. And this is how the system was built. It's one of the beauties of pharmaceutical drugs, actually. In the healthcare system, it's one of the few things in healthcare that over time, the cost will go down. Because the normal patent, so I'm going to give you a criticism of my industry and a positive. How it should work is when a drug manufacturer applies for FDA licensing, they get a 20-year patent. And that is to protect their investment for 20 years, to be able to sell that drug before generic or biosimilar comes out. And for everyone on the podcast, if you're not familiar with biosimilars, basically it's kind of the generic of a biologic, so specialty drugs.
And I would also say the difference is for generics, from my understanding, you can have a 30% variance on a generic. On a biosimilar, it is the same, essentially the same formulary. You can swap it, supposedly, one biosimilar for another biosimilar. A generic is different. Because I've had people on this podcast, doctors on this podcast, who will say to me straight up, there's no way if I need to give a patient a thyroid drug or a specific heart medication, maybe the heart medication, yes, thyroid drug, I am not putting a patient on a generic.
So I would respectfully disagree with all those people.
But you're not a doctor, and I'm not a doctor. So we'll put that aside. So the goal of, yes, 20 years to protect. Now, you could be AbbVie and protect Humira for way more than 20 years, right? Emerald was protected for way more than 20 years. So they can go put it into the legal realm. But yes, 20 years to protect because you're spending so much money on R&D. So once you get these biosimilars out, why does that not decrease the cost of medication for patients?
Yeah, so to give you landscape, over 80% of the drugs prescribed in our country today are generics. Over 80%. People don't realize that. And actually, we hear about drug importation all the time. When Florida passed the law for drug importation, you do the research. Actually, the generics in the U.S. are cheaper than the generics in Canada. Brand names, not so, but generics they are. Now, the thing is, since 2012, the big PBMs and insurers have probably excluded from their formularies 600 and 900 drugs. And part of that is maybe they think they're too expensive. Part of it is they don't make a lot of money on them. And some of those are generics, and some of those are biosimilars. So like when Humira came to market, there was a lot in the media that the insurance companies and PBMs still had the most expensive branded Humira on their formulary. And some of them didn't even have the biosimilar, which was cheaper, on formulary. Players gave them a hard time, so they would put one or they would put two. I think Amgen came out, Amgen, because they had the biosimilar Humira, came out with a high price and a low priced biosimilar. I mean, there's some big fights going on. But at the end of the day, it's not all about what's going to save the patient money. Quite honestly, these big companies, the insurers and PBMs, they're publicly traded. Their fiduciary duty is to their shareholders.
Correct.
To bring in more revenue and more profit. So why would they use a generic when they're not going to get a whole lot of rebates from that, and they can't get it from the manufacturer? So why would they put that on their formulary? Sometimes they do from pressure, sometimes they don't. So it doesn't always help patients when these come to market.
So there's so much intense competition within the marketplace with Big Pharma. What strategies do they use to differentiate themselves from each other?
Well, years ago, as we like to say in pharma, the good old days, to your point, early 90s, you could take physicians out to dinner all the time and stuff like that. There are an awful lot, and I think it's smart. There's a lot of regulations in place now where it strictly has to be around education, to the point where like you cannot take physicians out and educate them on the same thing multiple times in a certain time period, because then our regulatory team will just say, you're just taking them out to dinner. They're not learning anything new. So the competition really and truly, I think, is starting to differentiate itself by, do you bring something of value to the marketplace? Is there something that is not currently there, an unmet need, as we like to say? And so you need to bring innovative medicines to the marketplace. The challenge with that is today, there's not a whole lot of low-hanging fruit like congestive heart failure or GERD. Those have already been tackled by medical innovations from years ago, and now they're generics. Now you're talking about Castleman's disease. You're talking about diseases that are quite small, very small patient populations, So the drugs you bring to market usually have to be priced fairly high just to break even from your R&D costs.
And these can be orphan drugs. Do you or do pharmaceutical companies get any type of government subsidy to spend money on R&D for these less common, lesser known, more orphan drug opportunities?
I think that, and I'm going to wade into some water that I haven't been in a long time. Look, NIH and everybody talks about the money and the royalties and wanting to get more. NIH, look, they do the basic science. They're looking at, okay, how do we attack this disease state? And so they are doing the basic science and not really the treatment of that disease state. And that's when the pharmaceutical company comes in and they say, oh, we've learned this much from NIH. As far as money coming from the government for R&D, no, I don't recall or can think of that we get a whole lot from the government. We may work with academic centers. We may work with, different pharmaceutical companies, but I am not familiar with us getting any kind of supplemental money from governments. Now like with COVID
That's what
and
I
that
was just
whole
going to ask
thing.
you. So J&J actually created a COVID vaccine, and there
Right.
was money put in and given, a huge amount of money given to pharmaceutical companies for the COVID vaccine. J&J, I think, created the third vaccine, if I recall correctly, for COVID. How did this impact the way that J&J spent money during that period of time on anything else?
So I will tell you that COVID was a pandemic. It was a rare situation, and we needed speed to market. And so, yes, the government did help in that situation. I will tell you that when it first occurred, J&J, from what I heard on our conference calls, put put a hold on all the drugs that we had in development and put all our scientists to work on the vaccine.
That's
And
what
that
I
went on.
experienced. We were doing some research projects and everything was put on hold. How did that impact, or how is that impacting us now, 5 years later, when we put all of that R&D on hold for a year?
Probably you have drugs that were delayed coming to market because we moved our scientists, as did the other vaccine companies, over to work on that drug because that was a national crisis. And so the industry tried to step in and help. I think we got some goodwill from it that lasted for probably 3 months after the pandemic ended, and then it was back to big bad pharma. But hey, that's okay. That's what we're supposed to do. We're mission driven, so that's what they did. I keep saying we. I've only been gone for 2 weeks, so I apologize.
I
But
know, I was so flattered. You called me and you're like, Meredith, I can now do the podcast. I am gone from J&J. I was like, really, Chuck? When? You're like, yesterday. I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's awesome. So let's get on the podcast. So Humira, you brought up Humira. Humira is used for inflammatory arthritis, right? And different types of GI conditions for those who aren't familiar. And man, did AbbVie hold the patent for way longer than 20 years because they have a great legal team. So now there are so many biosimilars. I don't even know how many there are. I'm going to say 11. I don't know. I'm going to throw it out there. I think 11. So how do these companies differentiate themselves? How do these companies that have created biosimilars make any of their R&D money back or get onto the formularies? What are they doing? Because for us, at least in our office, we look at what's the least expensive option for the patient. What do these companies do? How do they get on the formularies?
to be honest with you, that's not my space. Never sold a generic. What I can tell you is I don't think they're running into the physicians' offices with marketing materials because I know that the margins are very
Oh
small.
gosh, some of them are. Some of them
Yeah,
are. So I'm thinking they
really,
must be giving a lot of monies to the PBMs to get on the to get
that's
on the
what
formularies.
what they have to do. They've got to work with the PBMs and insurers to get on the formularies, and then they probably have a contract workforce that goes out there, targets the high prescribing docs, and tries to get them to use a low cost version.
I'll tell you something shocking that happened to me, and it hasn't happened to me ever. But about 3 weeks ago, my RCM director came to me and said, listen, this insurance company is mandating that we use a biosimilar for Actemra. I didn't even know there were biosimilars yet for Actemra. what do we do? Because we don't even have this entered into our EHR. We don't even have a contract to buy this biosimilar. We called our specialty pharmacy. They don't even have the biosimilar in stock. And I just learned that as of June 1st, United Healthcare is going to have this as the preferred drug instead of Actemra. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing? I mean, does the patient have to be on Actemra? Because the insurance company would not allow us to use Actemra. We had to figure out how to create the wheel to get this and figure out where the hell we're going to get this drug, this biosimilar for this patient. So again, whack-a-mole, I always feel like we're doing that. So with biosimilars, is this what you're seeing with J&J? Are they doing anything in the biosimilar market?
No. So first off, the example you just gave with Actemra and going to the biosimilar and it being mandated by the insurance company or the PBM, this goes to the heart of, to me, the issue and the problem with healthcare is that has zero to do with patient care. It has everything to do with a company trying to save money and figure out a way to do it. And there's not a problem with that, except the physician's office throws you into chaos because they want it done immediately.
Yep.
Patient has
Delays
zero
care.
time. Yeah, they first of all, they could be scared. They maybe have no idea. I mean, it really, to me, and I don't understand, employers have fiduciary duties. Y'all have fiduciary duties. I don't understand how insurers and PBMs do not have fiduciary duties when right there they are practicing medicine, where they are telling you that you have to use a certain drug for a patient. So that is a question that dumbfounds me to this day. J&J, you asked, we are not in the business of biosimilars and generics. We made a commitment because some of us said we need to get into this, and they're like, no, we're going to focus on bringing innovative medicines to market. Whether or not that's the smart move, we'll find out in the next 3 to 10 years. But at the end of the day, is it trying to help patients who do not have a treatment today? Yes. I mean, there's different strategies. You can either say, you know what, we're going to be innovative around cost, so we're going to bring generics and biosimilars to market because that is important, or we're going to be innovative around treatment options for patients. And so the companies, I don't think there's a right or a wrong. It's what your mission is what is the best fit for you. Different companies went different ways, and J&J didn't go the biosimilar generic way.
You're not going the biosimilar and generic way, but you are one of the OGs for rheumatoid arthritis drugs, Remicade. And Remicade and Reclast really were the originators of that whole biologic in the RA world. And now there are, that I can think of, 4 biosimilars to Remicade. How are you, J&J, how's J&J combating these biosimilars coming onto market? Because one of the biggest challenges in the rheumatology world is that while we can prescribe Remicade, United Healthcare was requiring us to purchase a biosimilar where we were underwater. We would have to pay the patient to infuse him or her. We were not able to acquire a biosimilar that United Healthcare mandated that would be able to give a patient, long-standing patient on Remicade, 10 years, 5 years, and I see you nodding your head because you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you know what a pain this has been in our rheumatology market. I'm going up to Tallahassee next week, actually, to speak to our state legislators with the Florida Society of Rheumatology, but there are 2 drugs that one Amgen creates, right, Avzola, and Inflectra is Pfizer. And they created these biosimilars for Remicade, and we can't afford to buy them for patients because we get reimbursed by Medicare less, or the insurance company less, than what we can buy the drug for. So what is J&J doing to combat this?
So that's not part of what I do. So I'm not in those conversations. I will tell you that, Remicade, that was probably what our immunology portfolio was founded on back in 1998. And it was a tremendous drug. And along with Enbrel and Humira, it was a breakthrough, as you well know, in your practice. Um, it had a nice run. I think its patent ran out in 2016. And yeah, I mean, we did, I think, I was on some phone calls where we did a couple strategies to mitigate losing market share too quickly. And some of those had to do with pricing. But there wasn't any big strategy to keep the share of Remicade up or whatever. You go into the physician's office and there's new drugs that you have or new drugs that are out there, and let them know the pros and the cons. But to your point, there are some patients that they don't want the new drug. They want the old drug that has worked, that they feel good about, that they know they're not going to have an adverse reaction. And once again, I will bring it back to what you already did. One of the issues I have with medicine today in the healthcare system is an insurance company telling you to take a patient off of a drug and put it on a drug that you're going to take a loss.
But
And
I would question you, Chuck,
sure,
because I see a change in what J&J has done, and I see a change in what a lot of these pharmaceutical companies have done. They've offered rebates back to physician offices. So
okay,
J&J does have a rebate system where if you purchase a certain amount of Remicade or Simponi Aria, which are their two big drugs, at least in the rheumatology world, that you will actually get a percentage back at the end of the quarter. Are you aware of this?
no,
Really?
wasn't my world.
They don't share this info with you. So that's how J&J is combating this biosimilar challenge.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have to think about it for a second, Meredith. I was dealing the last 7 years with policy and advocacy. I don't have time to figure out what our sales and marketing teams are doing. There's too much information out there, but I'm glad we're trying to compete. So,
We are. So let's talk about that advocacy because in the past, you were really involved with the Florida Society of Rheumatology's annual On the Hill Day. And
sure.
that's when you and I actually first met. You're not going to be there next week?
Probably not unless they want me to testify.
So J&J is actually sponsoring again. I'll have to see who your replacement is, but sponsoring our dinner so that we can talk and debrief before we actually go to the hill, whatever hill there is in Tallahassee. I don't think it's going to be very high, but yes, the hill. But what does Big Pharma do in the world of advocacy? How are you involved? Why is it so important for Big Pharma to be involved?
Well, it's interesting. Our group, our advocacy team, there's not, most pharmaceutical companies do not have that same type of team. They all have, some of their lobbyists, which we call state government affairs or government affairs if they're up in DC. But Johnson& Johnson was somewhat of an oddity in that we had a large group, and now it's about 25 people across the company that would, or across the country that would work with medical societies like rheumatology or gastroenterology, whatever therapeutic area we had. We would work with advanced practitioner societies. We would work with employer coalitions, and really and truly just to talk to them about what are the issues of the day: copay accumulators, non-medical switching, step therapy, prior authorizations, issues like that impact your practices, your patients, that we think are things that are not doing what is right in medicine. And so we would inform, we bring them together. Like I would try to bring physicians from different specialties together so they could talk with each other because y'all are so busy, you never have time to talk to each other. I think that's a big Achilles heel for physicians. Um, but help them collaborate to realize they're on the same page. They're fighting the same fight for patients in good medicine. And so that's what we did a lot. And it was a lot of fun. And I'm very passionate about it. So advocacy, I think, and I've talked to you about it. I'm going to start my own podcast, probably not going to be as good as yours, but it's going to talk about the drug world and how the general population, we can make a difference. You have to advocate. Without it, it's not going to happen.
How can we? How have you made the biggest difference by working in the advocacy world?
I think really and truly by educating and informing physicians, other lobbyists on the intricacies of why things are happening and why there need to be legislative guardrails put into place. I know that Florida 2 years ago put into place probably one of the best PBM bills in the country.
Mm,
And you say, but it is one of the best ones out there. The challenge is the legislative process, you get a bill passed, but then it goes to the regulatory process, and other parties are able to work with staffers to water it down and to take away some of its effectiveness. The
Well, that's
biggest
what I was going
challenge.
to say. Actually, this is one of my biggest soapboxes, but I won't go on a tirade here. But yes, Florida did a great job creating legislation, and I'll share it was to avoid patient steering so that patients can choose which pharmacy they had their medications filled. And I've talked about this on a couple of podcasts. So instead of the insurance company mandating that you have to go to Walgreens or you have to use Optum RX for your specialty pharmacy, thank you, United Healthcare or United Health Group, right? You would be able to choose which pharmacy you felt most comfortable using. The problem that happened in Florida, and you're smiling, do you want to know what the problem is that happened in Florida?
I'm curious.
It's with pharmacy benefit managers. So we all have to go through that middleman. And so in order to fill a prescription, you have to be in network with the PBM for that state, if it is a state insurance. So we have a pharmacy in our office. We have contracts with PBMs, national PBMs. We can't get state PBMs. Why? Because Optum RX has said, you know what? We can do it. We can take care of everybody in Florida. You don't need to have a contract with us. So the way that the law is written, it's written that any new contract. So if you don't have a contract with that PBM in the state, it doesn't say they're required to have that contract with you. It states if you are contracted, but the PBMs are not contracting pharmacies. Therefore, there you go.
So I'm
Patient
not
steering.
a lobbyist, and I had heard about this before I left, that one of the ways that they were getting around expanding their networks was they just weren't writing new contracts.
Yes.
So until they write a new contract, they don't have to follow the law. And unfortunately, the legislatures, to some degree, are doing the best they can, but they are dealing with some companies that have a lot of very smart attorneys and business people that are figuring out, to your point, the whack-a-mole. Okay, you set up an obstacle, we will get around it.
Oh, loopholes all of the way through. And listen, our legislators want to do the right thing. They want to be able to allow our mom and pop shop pharmacies or any other pharmacy to be able to fill the drug that the patient needs filled and the patient wants filled. It's the PBMs who have so much money, right, and so much influence. They will hire whatever lawyer that they need to figure out the loophole. And that's the challenge because you know what? I love that you said my whole goal is to educate physicians, right, to be able to share what's going on in the advocacy world or the challenges to physicians. Why are we going up to Tallahassee? Really to talk to legislators because a lot of them are not in the healthcare world. They don't know what's going on. So it's our job to explain to them what's going on.
So I'll give you, this is the Chuck Melendi advocacy and not the J&J.
I want to hear what the Chuck Melendi advocacy is.
So here's the gift that I give to you in the legislative session right now. If I had a magic wand, first off, everything should be very, very
you're
broad.
ending the podcast? You're telling me your one wish?
No,
right now?
I have so many wishes.
Okay.
Right now,
okay.
Meredith.
What are you advocating for?
But I think what you have to do is all bills have to be extremely broad. So like the PBM bill that was written 2 years ago, they started off where they said the PBM has to give us rebates that they get. They have to flow through. Well, guess what? President Trump, the lame duck period of his first term, he took away the safe harbor. So the PBM's rebates had to flow through to the patients. Well, that's been delayed to like 2032. But all they did was create offshore GPOs. And the GPOs started to negotiate with pharma. So a PBM can tell you, I'm going to give you 100% of my rebates. But if the GPO is negotiating 70% of the rebates, you're going to get 100% of 30% of what they're negotiating.
Yeah, the
So you
GPO, the
have
money
to,
always goes through the GPO. If I get any
huh?
of my money always goes through the GPO. In order for me to get my rebate, it comes directly through my GPO.
Right. But they negotiate with different pieces of their business. So it can't, the PBMs and insurers own so many different entities. Basically, my language, if I was a legislative god, is I would say, you know what? Any money that you get from a pharmaceutical company through any of your entities or anybody you're contracted with, you need to give me a percentage of that. And then here's the other piece. To enforce the law, don't fine them. Don't fine hospitals. They have too much money. It's the cost of doing business. Exclude them from class of trade. That's what
Mm-hmm.
they do to pharma. If we break a law, if we don't do something the government wants, they'll say, fine, you can't sell in the Medicare or the Medicaid space. Guess what? All these things we're seeing with Medicare Advantage, if they went to the insurers and said, you keep breaking this law, you're going to be kicked out of this class of trade. They can't afford to do that. So you have to have more teeth with these laws. They have to be very, very vague because they're going to find a way to get around it.
But who is the cojones to do that?
Well, we do have, you would think our elected officials would do it. I mean,
That's what I'm hoping. Trust me, that's
I
what I'm
didn't know you
going
were
with.
Spanish. I like that, though.
So there, well, I'm from Miami. How can healthcare leaders and policymakers work together, though, to address the challenges and criticisms that are happening, either with Big Pharma or with PBMs? So what do you say to somebody who's listening to this podcast, saying, I can't believe this is happening, or, you know what, I'm really revved up and I want to help as well? What do you say to these people?
So I would say two things. First off, don't get mad, get even. I mean, look, at the end of the day,
Get
there's
even with the mafia.
there's so much money out there. You're not going to be able to outspend them. But if hundreds of little old ladies and men are calling a legislator's office and complaining, the staff's going to go to them and going, oh my God, your constituents are going crazy. That will overcome all the money that's out there. And it's not hard to do. This is all about advocacy. You can write op-eds, get a hold of your legislator. If you know someone on the local news, call them up. Let me tell you, the print media, they know what's going on. But the mainstream, your cable news, and they don't talk about who's really causing these issues. So at the end of the day, you have to get involved. You have to create noise. That is the only way this is going to change. Or I will tell you right now, we will be a one-payer system within 15 years. There's no doubt about it.
You and I have talked about that. What aspect or what was the driver that prompted you to leave J&J? Because you're too young to retire, Chuck.
So I turned 60 in December.
Still too young.
I didn't retire. I retired from the corporate world.
That's what I'm asking you. So why? Why'd you do it?
Because I know too much. And when I stand up and talk, when I worked for Johnson & Johnson, I represented Johnson & Johnson. And so you are limited to what you can say and how you can say it. As a private citizen, I can say and do what I want. And so I just couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore and hear all these horror stories and what's going on. And so I'm going to try and disrupt the system. I'm going to do some consulting, some speaking, some podcasting. And it's a passion project. And unfortunately, I am up at 5 o'clock every day because the squirrels are going crazy in my head about new things to do. My wife literally looked at me the other night at 11:15 and goes, I've never seen you in 10 years with a laptop in bed. What are you doing? I'm like, I can't help it. I'm going crazy. So I'm trying to make a difference with the little time I got left and what I know. So that's what I'm doing.
And you and me both. And people look at me and they're like, how much money do you make on this? What are you doing this for? And it's those people who don't get it. You get it, right? I do this because I want to leave the world in a better place in which I came into it. I know too much. I want to be able to open up the book of the inner workings in our American healthcare system, because we are 20% of our nation's GDP. We are a $4.8 trillion industry. Something has to change because Physicians are retiring at record rates, not going into healthcare, and we have more and more baby boomers that, I mean, I'm not a baby boomer yet and I still need healthcare, but the waits are extensive and people can't even afford the healthcare. So there has to be a change. So I appreciate you fighting this endeavor with me.
Meredith, you're amazing. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here. I've been waiting for 8 months to do this. And I'm happy with what you're doing. You and Mark do a phenomenal job in fighting for patients every day and not quitting and giving up. And I know how difficult it is for physician practices these days. Just like Big Pharma, you guys get a bad rap. Y'all make all this money.
All this money.
Yeah, and people do not realize, no, we're not making all this money. But thank you for the opportunity. I hope it was helpful.
This is great. So let me ask you, you get your one change. I'm giving you one wish to create change in the healthcare industry. Just one.
Oof.
What is it?
One change. That's a good
You
one.
knew this was coming.
Well, you only gave me an hour. Okay, so my one change would be, and I'm trying not to just think drugs here, but my one change would be that probably insurance companies and their PBMs would be broken up.
Ugh, hallelujah.
And could not be publicly traded companies.
Thank you, Chuck. Insightful. I look forward to collaborating with you. Thank you for coming on Working Healthcare.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity. Take care, Meredith.
If you like this episode and want to learn more about the inner workings of our American healthcare system, follow Working Healthcare on your favorite podcast platform. New episodes are available every Tuesday. To watch short clips of past and upcoming episodes, including today's interview with Chuck Melendi, follow Working Healthcare on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Tune in weekly with me, Meredith Hirsh, as we explore the inner workings of healthcare.
You ready? Yeah, you got me running. Got me running. Shake it, shake it.